Gave special status to the erstwhile state of Jammu and Kashmir. Let's talk about this now. We have with us D.K.DUBEY, well-known constitutional expert in our studio, and Professor Dipankar Sengupta of the Department of Economics of Jammu University also joining us over the internet. Welcome to you both. If I could first ask you, D.K.DUBEY, well, it is a clear case of triumph for the central government. Its move has got the stamp of approval from the Supreme Court. There are other parties, particularly in J&K, who have a different set of politics. They are disappointed by what has come from the Supreme Court. But legally speaking, constitutionally speaking, how do you see this verdict from the Supreme Court?
Actually, whatever was the situation, in that situation when the central government decided and President of India now passed a constitutional order. These were challenged in the Supreme Court. Supreme Court framed 8 charges, 8 issues. On all 8 issues, they have decided, first of all, the constitution, the Jammu and Kashmir status of Jammu and Kashmir is was temporary. Article 370 was temporary. So they said that it has to be gone because Article 370 does not create it or does not provide any special status. That was in temporary status. Supreme Court said it was a temporary status. That is why it has to be go. Now the second thing, what about the sovereignty? Supreme Court said in India there is only one sovereignty, that is through Constitution of India. There is no separate sovereignty in the state of Jammu and Kashmir after proclamation of 25th of November 1949. Now the third thing, whatever the president did, president decided, president had the power under Article 370. That is why whatever the president proclaimed, that was valid. Now the question before the Supreme Court was this, that if in case the Constituent Assembly gone, then what? The Supreme Court said in that matter that there is no need for the approval from the Constituent Assembly of the state of Jammu and Kashmir. There was no need for the approval from the Parliament of India also, because Article 370 has itself a power given to the President of India, and President can proclaim these things. So Supreme Court said all the provisions, whatever did by the central government, are valid, and they upheld it, the constitutional validity of the of proclamations.
Yes, indeed. Professor Sengupta, if I could ask you, in terms of what has been talked about as asymmetric federalism, this judgment that has come, the verdict that has come from the Supreme Court, how do you see it?
Look, more than asymmetric federalism, this article created a lot of confusion both in the minds of the residents of Jammu and Kashmir as well as people outside. And as a result of which, the uncertainty that was created served to hinder development in this particular state. And I'm not just talking about economic development, also political development. The polity in this particular state took advantage of this particular article to ensure that the democratizing tendencies of the Constitution of India, and I'm talking about the 73rd and the 74th Amendment, I'm talking about the Forest Act, which empowered local communities into entering Jammu and Kashmir. So Jammu and Kashmir, in a sense, had some autonomy, but it used this autonomy to ensure that its people did not get autonomy. And ironically, these are the central laws that have been extended to Jammu and Kashmir after Article 370 was written down and the Constitution of India was extended to Jammu and Kashmir. Number 2, you see, given this kind of uncertainty that Article 370 created, you had a problem when it comes to attracting investment. See, one of the biggest determinants of investment is basically a climate of certainty. Article 370 was used by the politicians of Jammu and Kashmir to create a climate of uncertainty, and as a result of which, private investment in Jammu and Kashmir actually dried up. It was used to make all sorts of statements. It was used in judicial activism also, which had to be corrected from time to time by the Supreme Court, and as a result of which, this particular stamp that has been given by the Supreme Court on what the decision the government took 4 years ago, this now enables the creation of a climate of certainty. In the last 4 years, as your correspondent said, peace has been restored, infrastructure work has been aplenty. Now comes the more difficult part where you persuade investors to invest in this particular state. You ask them to part with their own money, risk their money. And therefore, the Supreme Court judgment that has been given today, delivered today, that puts a stamp, a constitutional seal, and therefore makes a lot of uncertainty go away. We know what the future is for the state. It is closer constitutional links, complete constitutional integration with the Constitution of India. And I think for political development as well as economic development, this has been the best news we've received.
You mentioned that there was uncertainty, an atmosphere of uncertainty because of Article 370, which prevented the kind of development, the investments that could have taken place in J&K. But isn't a large part of the reason also because of this insurgency, the terrorism that was brought in because of the machinations of Pakistan, that we saw that sort of situation prevailing for decades?
That's a very good question, Gautam. You see, when it comes to terrorism, to a great extent, we got hold of terrorism, controlled terrorism from 2000 onwards, 2002 onwards, the graph was coming down. But you see, what dissuaded private investment after an initial surge was these continuous and long-term disturbances that would take place. You know, when Burhan Wani died, a disturbance that could have been contained within a few days, contained for months altogether. And this was created by a set of politicians who took refuge behind Article 370 to create a system that created unrest and a feeling of injustice everywhere. Now that, in a sense, has come to an end.
Okay.
The terrorist graph is going down even now, but what is equally important, that the disturbances that you used to think of, you know, the stone pelting, etc., that has come to an absolute halt. In the last 4 years, Gautam, how many stone pelting incidences have you come across? This is the kind of certainty, this is the kind of law and order you need. And this is where the government has delivered. What was required was a Supreme Court stamp on the constitutional developments, and that has been given. So I think I'm very optimistic about the second step. That is the drawing of private investment into Jammu and Kashmir, which will create jobs and which will create income opportunities.
Certainly. Now, D.K.DUBEY, in terms of what has happened, the Supreme Court has also said that elections should be held by September, the end of September next year, and it's even suggested to the centre that statehood should be restored. The Home Minister today also said in Rajya Sabha that at an appropriate time that will be done. But in terms of this particular verdict from the Supreme Court, what sort of precedent does it set?
Actually, at the time of hearing, Solicitor General proposed to the Supreme Court that we are doing some work in the state of Jammu and Kashmir through Election Commission. We have appointed a commission that is a delimitation commission. So after a delimitation commission, as soon as possible, we will hold the elections there. And statehood, whatever the thing is for the statehood, we will we will provide the statehood as soon as possible. Supreme Court, after an acceptance of the statement of the central government, they said that 30th September 2024 is the final date. And before that, you have to hold the election there. And as soon as possible means this is the responsibility of the people of the state of Jammu and Kashmir, that if they will not do anything wrong, like the insurgency and something else, then the situation will be normal, and in case of normalcy, the statehood will be provided by the central government. That is the thing Supreme Court suggested to the central.
Yes, certainly. Let's hope that we have progress on these fronts as well. That would also be in keeping with what the Supreme Court has altogether said in terms of all these petitions that were filed, more than 20 of them, which oppose the abrogation of Article 370, but that has been completely set aside by the Supreme Court. So that should end the debate once and for all as far as this matter of the abrogation of Article 370 and its opposition is concerned. Thanks a lot for joining us to talk about it, D.K.DUBEY and Professor Sen.